He started to sexually abuse her. He would sell her to his other friends, American, Colombian, whatever, who would come to Colombia to abuse his kid. This guy was also a guy who would rape animals. He had this dog. He would sexually assault the animal. She would have to watch. She would have to listen. Like, you got pedophile? Check. You got trafficker? Check. You got guy who abuses dogs sexually? Check. He would make this little girl watch Hitler videos and pray to Hitler at night. The only thing he was missing is he was a cannibal. Because everything else, he checks the box of just evil, evil, evil.
Hey, gang, welcome back for part 2 of episode. This is episode 178. It's our second part with Tyler Schwab. I hope you tuned in yesterday to hear this is Tyler's second time being on Game of Crimes, and it's because of what he's involved with, and it's a nonprofit organization known as Libertas International, which fights human trafficking and child exploitation. Why is he on here a second time? Because to me, that's one of the most important topics we can ever talk about. And guess what? I get to run Game of Crimes, so you're probably going to see him in the future as well. I've already talked to him about coming back. We brought him back. This is a 6-month follow-up or catch-up, and 6 months from now, I'd like to do the same thing. But we've got some more stories here to tell. I just want to mention a couple things. Not only does Tyler run Libertas, which is this international organization, but he's in charge of fundraising. But he called me, I don't know, a few months ago and asked me to do an interview with a newspaper. And let me tell you, it's not the New York Times. It's not the Washington Post. It was the Cowboy State Daily. I spoke with Jennifer Coker. There's no more important conversation I've had than with her because she supports Tyler and everything he does. And if my little story can help promote what he's doing, trust me, I'm going to get it out there just as much as I can. But then also, Tyler has his own podcast. Now, some of you know this. I don't listen to podcasts myself. I have a podcast. I just don't listen to them. I don't know why. I'm thankful that you do, believe me. So I have not heard the interview that Tyler did. But just to be invited, this was back in July, just to be invited to be on his show, to give my 2 cents to support him, brother, I will do it anytime you ask me. I don't know if you want to reveal what you just revealed to me about the future, but again, you ask, I'll be there for you.
Yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, if anyone wants to check us out, we have the Libertas International podcast where we bring on experts in the field, much more knowledgeable than me, is fighting human trafficking, interesting things that people are doing. Sometimes I look at that little podcast. I'm sure you're kind of the same way. You kind of look at it and you're like, oh, I know all these amazing people. For one, Steve Murphy's on there. He talks about working with different law enforcement and his experience fighting narco traffickers and looking evil in the face and how to combat evil in such a dangerous way. And then his interviews in there. My friend who has a nonprofit in Ukraine, whose best friend lives in Ukraine, and so she actually went down there while the war was going on because her best friend asked her to. This story of like friendship and beauty and just what people will do for each other when their souls connect on such a beautiful level that's one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. And seeing just the people on this on that podcast, like this woman that fights human trafficking on a prevention level in Wyoming, the state where I'm from. It's just amazing to be connected to so many good people, from someone who helped in the hunt for one of the most dangerous criminals of all time to someone that's going into Wyoming schools that have a population of 70, 80 kids to help keep them safe from predators in the future. It's just also amazing. And I'm starting another podcast with my best friends. You guys, by the time this comes out in January, you should be able to check us out, follow us, leave us a 5-star review, whatever. It's called the Locked Off Logic Podcast. It will be myself and my buddy who's a filmmaker, and that's why we're doing the podcast, is we both have a passion for film and media and culture, and it's just talking about movies and talking about people that have talking with people that have amazing stories, both inside the theater and outside the theater, as someone who produces film, someone who consumes film, someone who's a student of film, someone who's an activist in the fight against human trafficking, and our different perspectives, talking about movies, video games, culture, TV shows, and then having people like Steve Murphy and other people that have been on this podcast to come and share their stories as well. I'm a big believer in the power of story. the power of stories and how we can learn from each other's stories. I think it helps us to know more about how us as a human family live. And I think it just makes us a little bit more compassionate for the person living next door, because we really have no idea what their story entails and the beauty that's gone into making them who they are.
And that's the Locked Off Logic podcast.
Yes,
sir. Right. And when is it starting?
Starting January 1st. We're talking about myself and my buddy Sam, our story. We're reviewing a TV show that he just finished called that I need to watch to talk about it. It's called Arcane on Netflix. And then we're going to be talking about my favorite movie of all time, Logan, which has your guy Boyd Holbrook in it, who he plays the villain. He plays a member of the Reavers, real nasty guy in that movie, but great actor. And that's funny. I think I told you the story before how I loved Logan. Obviously, like Logan's my favorite movie of all time. I watch it every year. But when my Netflix algorithm came into cohesiveness with what I was watching with Logan, it's like, because you watch Logan, who has Pedro Pascal and Boyd Holbrook, or it has Boyd Holbrook, you may actually like Narcos. And then 2017, when that movie came out, that's how I found Narcos. So I was like, oh, the same guy's in it. And yeah. Wow. He plays a good guy in that one, though. He plays a good guy in Narcos.
Well, Boyd and I have remained in contact. He was a guest on Game of Crimes at one point here. So I'm pretty sure I might be able to make a phone call and see if we could get him on your show if you're interested.
That would be awesome. That would be so honored. Super
guy. He's a family man now. He's married. He's continuing to work his butt off. He's doing very, very well in the film industry. So I think I'm pretty sure he'd be willing to help you out. I mean, what a good cause, you know. And I'd mentioned to Tyler also that here on Game of Crimes on our Patreon side, I have a monthly episode that's called the Narco Meter. And what I'll do is I watch a law enforcement movie and I'll rate it. I'll critique the whole thing. And at the end, I rate it on our Narco Meter on accuracy, believability, and authenticity. That's very similar to what you're getting ready to do. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think it's a good thing for me too, because my buddy, he just provides me a good release from the work that I'm involved with day to day, and so it's just, I'm really excited about it.
That makes a whole lot of sense what you said, because I think that's one thing that keeps me motivated is this podcast is extremely time consuming, and it can just, I'm a workaholic. It can take over everything to where, shame on me. My wife she put up all the Christmas decorations this year. I don't know why she puts up with my crap, because I wouldn't put up with me, but I do appreciate her, love her to death. But having those other distractions just to help you maintain your mental sanity is so important. And I do have some other projects I'm working on and things that we're planning for the future. And I tell you what, I'm having a blast in retirement. I'm working a lot. I'm having a good time.
Good for you.
Okay, so I wanted to ask Tyler to just remind us, how is it you got involved with this? Because I remember from your first interview, you founded this company at age 23, and this is a nonprofit. I wouldn't even know how to go about starting a nonprofit. And here you are, fresh out of college, and you've got one, and it's been successful, and you're into your 11th year now. So how did you get involved in this to start with?
Well, I was a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Dominican Republic, and you just get exposed. I think me growing up in Wyoming, where I thought that like the trailer park was where like what poverty looks like, and it's not. It's like that's not. In comparison, it's just not what poverty looks like. And yeah, I would see it. I saw little girls with European men in the capital of Santo Domingo, in its beach towns. Like there's a beach town called Boca Chica, which is a place where Europeans visit to find girls to abuse. And just, it was just me sitting down with one, actually having a conversation. At first, I just put the blame on them. I was, well, these are a bunch of gold diggers. Why are they hanging out with these European men? And when you actually sit down and talk with a victim, you just realize the amount of trauma that's led up to that moment, and how they have no desire to be with like these old European men when they're 14, 13 years old, but they're being forced to, they're being exploited, they're being sold. And the amount of trauma that has to go into that moment is just, it's horrific. Share a little bit like what that looks like in one of the cases that we'll talk with in the coming minutes. But just sitting down and having a conversation with somebody and listening to their story just made me realize what was happening. And so I started a nonprofit. It started out as a GoFundMe because I had no concept of how to run a nonprofit. I still kind of don't. I still kind of feel like I'm like
So you
winging it a
feel
little
like you
bit.
figured it out.
No, no. I put on a good cover, but because there's still some days where tax season's coming up. I have this email. It's like, hey, you got to finish these taxes from QuickBooks. I just keep putting it off, putting it off, and because in my mind stuff comes up day to day, and it's a little more urgent. And then before you know, a month has passed. I'm like, oh shit, I got to get on this. So you click on it, then you're like, I have no idea how the hell to do this. What am I doing? And so the nonprofit, I had a lot of help. I still have a lot of help. I have some really good people that help fund the nonprofit. There's this really amazing company out of Ojai, California, which is a place I never thought that my journey would take me, is to a place like Ojai, California, a very generous company out there that helps support Libertas International, called the Wound Pros. I have people that offer their time and their resources, that are accountants, that are lawyers, um, that are donors, that connect me to different people. Like, someone took me to lunch the other day and asked me for a pitch book. And I was like, I don't know what that is, bro. And they're like, it's a pamphlet you give to donors of like, here's where your money will go to. And when I have that, it's just all in my head, in my mouth. I take people to lunch and dinner and we talk, and I share stories and let them get to know me. But there's a paper form of that some donors want. And so she's helping me make that. And so I still I don't know if I really know how to run a nonprofit, but it's there. And we're trying to do good work. There's other nonprofits I want to start in the future. Like I want to start a nonprofit that helps specifically in Wyoming, helping survivors in Wyoming, helping law enforcement in Wyoming. I had a really good conversation with a law enforcement officer that's currently working exploitation cases in Wyoming. And he was just saying that because of their budget and the amount of travel they have to go from different cities in Wyoming, going from one city to another could be 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's a lot of gasoline. And just having some extra budgets to do more cases, they can help just cover things like gasoline. So I want to contribute where I grew up. But Medellin, how I got in Colombia, Medellin, is I was called down there by Homeland Security and from an agent that's about ready to retire. And he had a case of an American guy that was in prison, and they found a bunch of videos, and they were locating these girls in these videos. And what this agent was finding is that these girls were ridiculously poor. And so that's why they accepted this invitation by this guy on Instagram to be exploited and to go to a place that they didn't know what was going to happen. And that's how I got started there. And I've traveled the world. Like in the last episode, we talked about some of the cases that I worked in Peru and Guatemala and in the United States. And what I saw in Medellin was just an injustice that I didn't think anybody was really working on, with American people that would go down and exploit these poor girls. I mean, sex tourism, they would go down, like just these rape vacations. And I couldn't sit with it. It's just these people were nasty. They were evil. They were violent. They were cruel. They were sadistic. And these girls were just so poor. And I just decided that's where I wanted to spend my time for the time being, to see if I can't help make these girls' lives a little less hard. Because like Libertas International, we really are like a victim service company. That's what we do. Just during the process, like there's these survivors that want justice for what's been done to them. And so in that case, we'll help connect them to the right people to help make justice happen. But we support them the whole way. If they decide to report or not, we've had girls that don't want to report. They were like, I did it once, I want to do it again. I don't want to do that whole process. And for us, we respect that, because it's very intimate, it's very hard, it's very long, and there's a lot of holes, especially like in the system in Colombia, to where it can be potentially dangerous. And we always support them if they decide to report, or whether they don't. We always support them in what they want to do.
It just amazes me that you picked Colombia. That's one of the. It's just it's as beautiful as it is, and I'm not dissing on Colombia. I love the country, especially since my two daughters are from there. But the people that I worked with down there were fantastic. The law-abiding citizens in Colombia that you get to know and befriend are just fantastic. They're very accepting. They're very proud of their country. But yeah. I mean, if you look at the history of the country, there's actually a part of their history referred to as La Violencia, the violent time, and they recognize in their history how violent they are. They have the second longest running civil war in the history of the world. So that tells you right there how violent it is. And the insurgent groups, whether it's FARC or M19 or ELN or AUC or whatever group that is the new alphabet agency or organization of the year, they just find a lot of room down there to operate. It's very heartbreaking. But one of the other reasons I want to ask you about that is, and I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but this is how important it is. Tyler had told me, and if you're not comfortable talking about this, don't. and don't mention names because I don't want to put you in any more peril than you're already in. But not that long ago, we were exchanging. Tyler and I were exchanging emails, and I've tried to practice my bonehead Spanish, my redneck Spanish on him sometimes. And I told him, "Be careful, you have a lot of enemies down there." And he came back and told me, he's like, "Yeah, I got a story to tell you." So, can you tell us just what you can tell us about that story, the dangers that you're facing at this very minute?
Yeah, I won't mention a lot about it. I think for one, I'm still kind of working through that trauma myself, and the other one is like there's the lives of some of the people that we care about down there that are at risk, and it's just it's interesting because you fight evil, and that you shouldn't be surprised when evil fights back. I'll go off on like a little tangent how I'm working to process this is. Like I mentioned, like in my podcast, I'm a big believer in film and the inspiration that you take from film, and a movie that really affected me recently was actually The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight, the Batman movie with Christian Bale, directed by Christopher Nolan, because it details when the Dark Knight is kind of up and going in his fight against organized crime, against the mob, and he's winning because he got a lot of help. Like he has the help of like the district attorney and the police, the Commissioner Gordon and Harvey Dent, and all these different people. And the nerds, they'll kind of know who I'm talking about, like Harvey Dent, Two-Face, and all these different people.
I know.
Perfect. You're my guy. That's why you're my guy, Steve. And so in that movie, I've watched it probably 20, 30 times over the span of my life. And this time it just hit different because it's in his fight against the mob, out of desperation, turned to someone that they don't quite understand, that person being the Joker. And the Joker is the one that went after things that were very personal. He has no concern over human life. He's not looking he just wants to watch the world burn. And unfortunately, like some of the things that we're experiencing now, in some of these cases, some of these people are turning to people they don't quite fully understand, and we don't quite fully understand as well. Mm-hmm. And they're dangerous. They have no concept for human life. And so myself, this is probably what I can say about it is I'm just taking more precautions myself, where in public, I will only go out and speak with the public on people that I really trust, like people like you, where I know your audience is a very safe audience. Your audience is a very protective audience. To where if like I had something happen, I know that your audience would have my back on that. The Game of Crime audience is second to none. And he did not pay me to say that. That's just what I see.
True. That's absolutely true. Very well said.
Yeah, and so it's just it just hit different to where in that movie you see Bruce Wayne, Batman, kind of reconsidering how he fights the fight to keep his people safe, and we're kind of doing the same thing. Like that's probably all I can say about it. Is just we're doing the same thing. We're kind of looking at how we keep ourselves safe, how we keep our team safe, and more than anything, how we keep these survivors safe. Because you start messing with someone's money, and people get very, very upset about that. Mm-hmm. And so there's some elements of organized crime involved. There's some elements of personal safety for me, for people I care about, and so we're just proceeding with caution now as we continue to do what we told these people what we would do, which is support these survivors, because these survivors are the ones that trusted us with their safety, with their healing, and ensuring that we can help keep them safe and that we can help support them in their business, in their education, in their what they're looking to accomplish in their healing, and that's something that we're continuing to be dedicated to. Right. Because they deserve nothing less than our full effort. And I think I heard this. I think I heard this on one of the Game of Crimes podcasts. I'm not sure, but I have it seared in my brain from wherever I heard it. But I think it came from this podcast where one of your guests or somewhere I read said that being brave isn't being without fear. It's doing the right thing in spite of your fear.
Absolutely.
And it just stuck with me. That's something that I try to wake up with every day in our way of doing things now, of how do we adjust an organization to keep ourselves safe, keep the girls safe, keep our team safe, and ensure that the work that we do continues to go, so that these girls who have trusted us with their healing continue to be able to do that without any kind of impediment.
And I don't know that this is a comforting statement to tell you, but the fact that you have garnered their attention means that you're successful. It's as sad as this sounds, and it shouldn't be like this, but that's the price you pay when you do the right thing. Doing the right thing is not always easy. I had actually written in my notes what you told me in the email when I told you about be careful of all your enemies. You said I had to learn the hard way over the last few months about the enemies. And it was very disconcerting to read because I know you're just trying to do the right thing. The other thing I really like about Libertas is not only are you helping to rescue, but you mentioned the aftercare. You're not just getting these people, victims, out of a situation and saying, there, go enjoy life. You're helping them to get their life back so that they can enjoy life. And that's just monumental. Mentioned I met a guy last night. I was doing an interview on somebody else's podcast. Well, I'll mention this because when it comes out, I'm going to promote them. It's called the Anti-Hero Podcast. And it's the guys I spoke to last night. One is an Orange County, Florida deputy. The other is a former Army special operator. And the operator, one of his jobs now is he helps to rescue these people. So I was kind of asking him more and more about that. He actually knew about Libertas down in Medellin because he's done some work in Colombia. But that's his job, is to rescue. He and his group are hired by organizations like Libertas. And I'm sure parents, if you had the financial resources, you wanted somebody to go rescue your child, I'm sure that goes on as well. But that's not the role they've taken. They've taken the role of somewhat of the enforcer type model to get them to people like Tyler and his group who would help them. That's not to say that Tyler doesn't go on rescues, because he actually physically participates in some of these. I'm not going to ask him to what extent, because I'm not going to put him in any more of an uncomfortable situation. But I do want to get into a few more stories here. And I mentioned in the first episode that you send me these stories, emails, a lot of their successes, the big successes, and it's phenomenal. So the first person we'd like to talk, it's okay to mention everybody's names now, right? Because that's public record.
Yeah.
So this first jackass, this first pervert, wait till you hear about this guy, Dominic DiVincenzo. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
Dominic DiVincenzo. Just tell us about him and start by his military career.
Yeah, he first came on our radar because we were referred a case with a very small little girl who he had taken somewhere, and he had abused her. And then her friend, if she said no, he drugged her and abused her anyway. But in our investigation with him, and in the investigation that the cops did, and us supporting these survivors, we discovered that he served in the military. What branch of the military and what he actually did, I don't know for sure. But from what we had heard, that he was in the military, and he moved down to Colombia in, I think it was 2021. Like, stories, he fell in love with the city. What he fell in love with was just the amount of vulnerable girls that he could abuse in that city. And it started with one turned into three turned into five, and just more and more of these girls just reported that he had done these things to them. And even from outside sources as well, there was like a news article that came out about him, to where, because the neighbors were complaining that all these girls were going in, and they were doing loud music at night, and this female journalist went to go talk to him about it. Like, hey, what do you have to say about these accusations and these videos that are coming out? And he was like, look, you need to take a look around you and realize that the whole world that you see was built by men, and men built this world, and men can do whatever they want. And so go away, talk to my lawyer. I'm not interested in talking to you. Which is like the attitude of him saying that to a female journalist is very similar to what he would say to these victims. So we support the girls. They're still getting their healing from us. There's one that is getting her Christmas present today from these cases. And when the arrest happened, from what I've heard, he was screaming that they had no proof. But during the arrest, they found a 16-year-old girl on site at 6 a.m. And so that case went through. The Colombian government did a really good job of prosecuting this guy, and he's now serving 15.5 years in prison. And Colombia as a whole is a much safer place now that he is no longer a member of the society anyway down there.
Now, I'll tell you, I've been to prisons, especially La Picota in Bogota. It's not a prison you want to go to. It's not like a U.S. prison where you're not completely safe, but it's a whole lot nicer than what you see in foreign country jails. And if the prisoners down there follow suit as they do in U.S. prisons, people who go to prison for the charges that this jerk was charged with and convicted of, he will suffer a very difficult life. And I kind of refer to that as he's getting a taste of his own medicine. One thing that stuck out to me in the article that you sent me, Tyler, was that he selected young girls with special needs. I mean, just to start with, it's depraved what he's doing, but you would pick on people that have mental or physical disabilities. It just gets worse and worse. I mean, how low is low when it comes to these people?
Yeah, he would really pick. He would pick the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. Like not just that, but like there's another girl who's that actually turned him down, and he got really pissed off at her. She's a 16-year-old girl who has a mom that has terminal cancer, and he was very insistent that he come to his house, and she was very. This is all like via Facebook. She's like, "Bro, I know you. I'm not going there." And he flipped. Like he was like, "You have no idea. Like if you're gonna go out with somebody, at least go out with someone that's got money. If you're gonna go out don't go out with a nerd. I'm not a nerd. I have money. You have no idea what you're missing out on. Girls that hang out with me really enjoy my company." Just berating this 16-year-old girl. And she's like, "Who do you think you are, bro? Like in your mid 40s, you're overweight. Who do you think you are? You think your money makes you somebody to me? I am not interested." And he continued to just berate her because she wouldn't come to his house. But she knew what was going to happen. She knew who he was, and she knew that she had to stay away from that penthouse that he lived in, or else bad things would happen. He was a monster, and the city is much better off. And he found her because she was extremely vulnerable because her mom has a terminal illness. And so that's why he was offering her to come clean his penthouse for $25-30 US.
And I think you sent me pictures of him. Is he the big fat slob in the dirty T-shirt and the basketball shorts? And I think
Yes.
He's got shower shoes on with white knee socks. I mean, and he thinks he's a man of money, a man of means, huh?
Yeah, and I think just that internalization of I am better because I'm a man. And you see his Facebook posts, they've all been deleted now. I think he has somebody else that's managing his social media while he's in jail, but just a lot of his racist posts too, where he was kind of bagging on the Colombian people for different quirks they have in their culture. Just he was there in Colombia to take advantage of the most vulnerable. And we're very happy he's in jail. I know a lot of not just the survivors that we supported, but also the survivors that maybe haven't found their voice yet, or potential victims that he would have created are now sleeping a lot better knowing that he's behind bars. Because he was doing this since 2021. And the first survivor that we got referred to us in 2023. And so that's 2 years potentially of victims that he was victimizing that we have no knowledge of who they are or what he actually did to them.
How many victims have you found so far associated just with him?
I believe the current number is at 5. 5 victims of his, and the youngest one that we had was 14, and she's confirmed 14. She's a little older now because she's been with us for a few years, but she's little because she comes from a very poor family. She's very small. If you look at her, she probably looks like she's 11, maybe 12, but she was 14.
And he was using his apartment or his condo, whatever it was, as an Airbnb, right?
Yep. Yeah, and there's like there's this Facebook post that's again since been taken down, but he's looking for a roommate, and he was very cryptic in what he was saying. He's like, my roommate has to be okay with certain events that take place in my penthouse. Even the thing like just he lived in this penthouse and he was doing illegal construction on his penthouse to give it like an extra floor. It was illegal. He's not allowed to do that per whatever law in Colombia that says you couldn't do that unless you have specific permission from a certain company or whatever. He just didn't care. Like in Colombia was just his playground. He did not care about the laws. He didn't care about the people. He was just there to do whatever he wanted to do, and it caught up with him.
Was he leasing that out or renting it out to other people who wanted to do the same things that he was doing?
I'm not sure if he was or not. I know that he was in the process of. I think the roommate he was looking to find was to help someone split the cost with that was also involved in the same type of stuff. Because we're finding out more and more that like these people, they know each other. These people that travel overseas, they communicate online when they're here, and they communicate online when they're there as well. they're very aware of the situation. They're very aware of who the vulnerable girls are, where to find the most vulnerable, and different loopholes, different places, maybe different hotels that have a higher tolerance of minors coming in than others.
Right. Right. The article that you sent, or the email that you sent me, talks about where you guys have kind of had to create your own witness protection program to protect these girls. This is the case, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In this case, I probably can't talk a lot about this on the pod, but there was a situation where one of the victims of Dominic was at risk. Her life was at risk. Someone tried to hurt her in exchange for changing her statement. And we had to essentially evacuate her out of the city, help cover the cost of her living expenses while we applied for witness protection. And thank God the witness protection finally came through and she's safe now. But there was a span probably 12 hours where it was her life was in play and we had to act because if not, she probably would not be with us at this moment. And she's awesome. She is an awesome, awesome girl. Brave, brave, brave. Started a new life in a new place, which is really hard, and did not recant, did not change her statement, did not take the bribe, did not fall to the threats. She stood her ground. And like what happened is that these goons, the goons that were his, came to her house, roughed her up, took her to his lawyer's office, and tried to make her recant her statement. And so after she got done there, she called us, called the cops. She recanted her recant, explained what happened, and then we helped intervene to get her out of there so that her life could be preserved. Because there was a time, where we thought that this little girl's life was in jeopardy.
For everybody listening to this, would you have the stones to stand up and do that? How old was she? 15?
Yes, she was abused by him when she was 16, and she was referred to us as 16, and so I think she's 18 or 19 now. Maybe 18, I think. It was
that takes fortitude, that takes perseverance, that takes inner bravery to do the right thing there when your life's being threatened. Kind of makes us appreciate what we have here in our United States, doesn't it? We're not the most perfect country in the world, and we're dealing with this. But the sad thing is, most of the perverts in the world come from our country. It's just outrageous. And I read you those stats. I don't need to go over those again. Man. Now, you mentioned earlier about a pharmacist from Miami, Stephen Correa. Tell us a little bit about Stephen.
Well, this guy is a special piece of shit. And it goes back to they're all kind of special pieces of shit, honestly. But but this one is a very specific. So this case was actually a surprise to us, where we saw the news that this pharmacist had been arrested, going from Miami to Medellin, based on the stuff they found on his cell phone when they secondaried him or whatever. And so he was in jail, and we got the details of the case. And the case was, we got to know just what a special type of POS this guy was, based on his text messages going back and forth between a pimp. He had this pimp that would get him girls in Colombia that were 12 years old and under, his preferred age being 11 to 9. And he would purchase iPhone 6s, not iPhone 14 or whatever, iPhone 6. And he told the pimps, I want this girl to come back. She was 10 years old. And he was like, please tell her not to cry this time. I'll give her an iPhone. And so it reminds me of the thing that we read, the Small Town Police, because this guy was giving this girl a burger and fries. And it reminded me of the story of this guy was giving iPhones so that these girls wouldn't cry. He told the pimp, he's like, just tell her to let me finish. I know it'll hurt, but I'll be gentle this time. If she doesn't cry, she gets an iPhone. And so the whole case, when we first found out, I was like, this is horrific case. He's being charged here in the United States. Thank goodness.
Good.
The Americans are the ones that will, you talk about the United States after these threats happened against our team, after witnessing this girl that crossed Tijuana. I just want to give a shout out to our amazing country. It's not perfect, but my gosh, here in the States, I feel so safe. The survivors that come here to testify or to collaborate with the case, they feel so safe. We really do live in just an amazing, amazing place that a lot of the world has yet to replicate, and we should feel so lucky to live here.
Right.
And I'm very grateful that the Americans are prosecuting this guy and not the Colombians. Not the Colombians wouldn't do a good job, but in Colombia, there's this law to where you have the right to know who reported you, which for a defense, like it may sound good, but it's led to a lot of threats on behalf of victims of human trafficking that report their traffickers, because you can get their name, you can get their address. Versus in the States, you can actually be a Jane Doe until trial, which is good. So the Americans are taking this, and I say that because we're getting a lot of victims of this pharmacist. I think the current count of girls in our program are 5 or 6 from the same guy around that same age, kind of like 10 to 14, 15. There's a lot of that you talk about, like just kind of the stories that kind of haunt you still. Is there's about 30 more victims that have yet to be identified. And so we're lucky we have really good partners with Homeland Security in Miami. They're doing a really good job of making sure these girls are safe and making sure they have access to like the Libertas resources. But you talk with these girls, and this guy, like if you can Google Stephen Correa, you can see like his Gucci backpack, his slick back haircut. He's a middle-aged man that really wants to be in his early 30s again. And his text messages are just horrific. Don't cry this time. You get an iPhone if you don't cry this time. The amount of victims is just horrific. And throughout this process, there was a lot of discussion across different news agencies in Colombia of, well, these are just party girls. They're just looking for a good time. They're addicts. And that is 100% not true.
At 11 years old.
Yeah, exactly. 11 years old. They have no blame in this. And when you sit down and you talk with them, these girls come from broken families. They have an abusive dad or an abusive neighbor, or a drug addicted mother, or a brother who's in jail because he was part of one of these armed groups or something. The amount of trauma in these families that's led to them being in a hotel room with someone like Stephen Correa is more trauma than one human being should be allowed to endure. And he's a monster. He takes advantage of the most vulnerable among us and the smallest among us for his own sick sexual gratification. And I really hope that the justice is served. You know, Florida, obviously, like Florida, I imagine they're gonna treat him as exactly as he should be treated in the justice system. And to the credit of the amazing girls at Libertas International is that they're wanting to collaborate. They're wanting to help put this monster away, because this monster abused them. He abused their friends. He was a reoccurring nightmare. He had something like 42 entries into Colombia over the last 3 years. And their bravery is what's going to end up resulting in a pedophile behind bars, and a lot of victims who will not be victims because Stephen Correa is no longer able to come to Colombia.
Oh man, yeah. One of the in the email you sent me, one line that sticks out is he would also film the abuse as he likes to see the fear. Well, you're a real freaking man. You're picking on a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old. You're doing unspeakable things to them. I hope somebody videotapes the fear on your face when you make it to prison, because you're going to live a tough life in there.
I forgot about that detail. That's such a good detail that you remembered. Is that he would film the whole thing, and he wanted to see the fear in these girls' eyes when he would abuse them. He'd give them gifts and do his thing, and then he got off on the fear. And just the whole thing, like you start to you just get so pissed off like talking about it, of just like, well, any one of the people that you've had on your podcast, let's see if he's that big of a man in front of them. Let's see the fear on his face on any one of the interviews that you've had of these amazing people all over this podcast. Let's see if he's that brave when he's not up against an 11-year-old girl, but he's up against someone that's been lucky enough to be on your podcast. Let's see how brave he is then.
I'll tell you what, there's a few ladies that we've had on the podcast here I'd like to introduce him to. One comes to mind is Sherry Foster, because she straightened that boy out.
Get him, Sherry.
Yeah, Sherry was she's former GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and then she's a retired DEA agent.
Gosh, that's awesome.
And she had a story of her own about growing up in an abusive environment as a child that we've been friends for years and years. I'm friends with her husband. It's just, that's why I say we bring on so many, and I'm not taking credit for any of this. We bring on studs and studettes here that you're not going to hear other places, that do things that are unbelievable, and they persevere. They don't let their circumstances get them down and remain the victim for the rest of their lives. They overcome that. Can I do that? Probably not. I'd probably be curled up in a corner somewhere crying like a little baby. but it's so motivating to get the folks on here, just like you. I mean, I know you're going through a tough time right now. I saw it in yesterday's episode. You could see some of the trauma in your eyes and your face as you're describing what you're going through, brother. And you're in my prayers every freaking day. It's probably not a good thing to say. You're in my prayers every freaking day. You're in my prayers every day.
I appreciate it, man.
Lord.
No, and no, I appreciate the prayers, man, and I appreciate the support, and but I think like despite like all the stuff going on and some of the stuff you talked about, like this guy and Stephen Correa specifically, there's an experience that was so beautiful for me of just kind of like remembering of why we do this, because sometimes I gotta tell you, I just want to be like, you know what, I'm done, I've had enough, I'm tired, I just want to go just, I don't know, stock Walmart shelves and listen to a podcast all day. I'm just you just get burned out. And you have moments, and this Correa case gave me one of those moments this year where we referred to this amazing girl. She's so polite, she's so sweet, she's just an amazing kid. She just happened to have the misfortune of being abused by Stephen Correa. He filmed it discreetly and he shared it with all of his friends. And so she's been defined by that experience. Like she's very well known in schools. The girl has been in the videos, and it's just really hard for her. And when we were talking to her, we're not a nonprofit with a ton of money. There's other nonprofits that have more money, but we always try to be just very radically generous to members of our survivor family. And so when we were meeting with this amazing girl, she was telling us about just her childhood and growing up. And she had this idea of starting this beauty school that she wanted to go to in lieu of like high school, while she let the videos run their course and she'd be able to go to high school again. And she told us that she really enjoyed rollerblading, but when her family hit some extreme poverty, she had to sell her rollerblades when she was 13 years old, and then just the poverty just spiraled until she ended up with being abused by Correa. So we hear that story, and we happen to be close to a mall, and it's like, well, would you like some roller skates? And like her face, she went from like this girl that was she was very respectful, she was very just. She's very respectful, but she's also very somber, because she knows the girls that come to Libertas International do not have good stories. And they're there because something bad has happened. But when we were like, would you like some roller skates? The look on her face, she went back to being a 13-year-old kid. She was like, well, yeah, but what if they have them in pink? Very like kid question, like, well, what if they don't have my favorite color? Like, I can't get green roller skates. Like, what would the kids say? So we took her there. And we took her to the roller skate store, whatever that is, and like the Sportsman's Warehouse of, Medellin. And we let her pick out some roller skates. And there's this video that I have that's just like, it's awesome, bro. And I'll send you, I have a picture of it too where her face doesn't show up. I can send you that picture where she's putting on like the roller skates, because those things are hard to put on.
Yeah.
And she's doing laps around like Sportsman Warehouse. And everyone's just letting her do it. Like they're just letting her do it like these laps, and she's really good. You could tell that this is a part of her childhood that was taken away, but the muscle memory kicked in.
Yeah.
And I was telling my team, I was like, this is why we do this. Like, this is, if we live for 25 years, the nonprofit goes away next year, or we raise all this money, we raise no money. If we were able to help this girl have this moment doing laps around Sportsman's Warehouse and letting her be a kid again, that's what we want to do. This girl's going to be able to grow up because of the work that we did and the donors that helped fund this work. It's one of my favorite videos because it's just a kid being a kid. It's a kid doing laps around Sportsman's Warehouse. And it was such a beautiful moment. And after meeting someone like Stephen Correa, that moment for her is very well deserved.
Yeah. And you gave her childhood back. The pair of skates gave her childhood back. Wow. It makes you smile, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's cool.
It's, and I'm not saying this about you specifically. Jaime and I both went through a time in Medellin where we started feeling sorry for ourselves and just let Escobar surrender, let him do whatever he wants to do. We're tired, we want to go home. And for us, we would see some of our brother law enforcement professionals down there get killed in an operation, and kind of snaps you back to reality. But what you saw, the motivation there to keep rolling, is a whole lot nicer than what I saw.
Yeah.
I love it. So we got one more jerk that we want to talk about here, and Mr. Peter Kennedy.
Yeah. So this guy is a guy. He's been there's a special kind of, we've talked about like spirituality a little bit on the podcast, and sometimes I gotta tell you, Steve, the knowledge that there's a hell actually gives me more peace than the knowledge that there's a heaven. It really does. And Peter Kennedy is the epitome of this example. So I met this amazing girl, and this girl's a public figure now. Her name is Blue. She speaks English. You could actually interview her on your podcast if you wanted to. She is an amazing young woman. She speaks fluent English, and she's really the person that allowed this whole thing to happen. Blue, she came to me when she was 16 years old, and I don't think I've ever met a girl that's been less friendly than Blue, and for good reason. We were talking, and the first thing that she said to me when she met me was, she's like, "I'm not going to have sex with you," and I was like, "Great, I'm not going to have sex with you either." So we're on a good footing here. We're off to a good start. Like that's good news. But for her, she had to kind of fill me out, where it's like I'm a man, and she had really poor experiences with men her whole life, to where because of what she had gone through, she had to ask me that question. Not even question, like telling me that she was not going to have sex with me. And she was like, "Great, I'm not going to do it with you either. So this is really good." So we meet up. We're talking about the program and if she wants to be involved in all these different things. And she starts telling us her story. We started gaining her trust little by little actions that prove that we're safe people. And she told me, she was like, "Well, my life started out really poorly when I was about 4 years old. My dad started to sexually abuse me. I remember when it started, but 4 is when I remember it happening. He would take pictures. He would do all these different things. He would hurt me a lot. At some point, mom became her main trafficker. And her story, it's almost like something out of a movie, where she was taken to the border of Colombia and Ecuador. She was abused there at some kind of brothel for children specifically. She was taken on an airplane at one point to France, where a guy from France would sexually abuse her, and her mother being the main catalyst of the one that was facilitating the abuse. And it all led to a point where she was about 13 years old in the city of Cali, Colombia. This is we're outside of Medellin at this point, where she was sold to a guy named Peter Francis Kennedy. And Peter Kennedy, she was told that he would be his personal assistant, but obviously it's not the case. And what grown-ass man has a 12-year-old personal assistant?
Right.
He started to sexually abuse her. He would sell her to his other friends, American, Colombian, whatever, who would come to Colombia to abuse his kid. This guy was also a guy who would rape animals. He had this dog. He would sexually assault the animal. She would have to watch. She would have to listen. And if you understand anything about Blue, she cares very deeply about her cats. Her cats and animals are her thing. She has 7 cats now. The cats that she's had that have passed away are tattooed on her back. She just loves her animals. She loves her cats. And so this guy would abuse animals as well. And at this point, she's telling me all this stuff, and I'm just like, this guy is the worst asshole I've ever heard of in my life. And she still wasn't done talking. Like, you got pedophile, check. You got trafficker, check. You got guy who abuses dogs sexually, check. At this point, he's already at the top of the list, the worst people on the planet. And it gets worse, to where he was also a Nazi. And not like the Nazi that kind of people throw around here in the States, but like a guy who is a Mein Kampf studying, Hitler YouTubing Nazi, where he would make this little girl watch Hitler videos and pray to Hitler at night. And so at this point, just the trifecta, the only thing that he's missing is cannibal. And he would be he is literally crawled out of hell. The only thing he was missing is he was a cannibal. Because everything else, he checks the box of just evil, evil, evil. And so this little girl, she made a report, and she started getting help from the nonprofit. And at this point, like a lot of different NGOs, including a lot of NGOs, got involved in the hunt for Peter Kennedy because he fled. He knew that he was being reported for what he was doing. At this point, we started to get other victims in our program as well that were victimized by him. They were younger, even still. There's a girl that came to us when she was 12, and he fled. The thing about this guy is he has money. He had money. He had multiple passports, and so there was this international chase for this guy across Colombia to Ecuador, Dominican Republic to Lebanon, Lebanon to Greece, Greece to England, England to Dominican Republic again. And it took a long time for this investigation to finish, 2 years, because he just kept hopping around using his different passports until he was finally arrested in Argentina. He finally got the Interpol red notice where every law enforcement agency on the planet was looking for him, and we finally got him arrested in in Argentina. The case is still ongoing. There's still a long legal battle ahead in Colombia, we're assuming, because I'm sure he's not going to take responsibility. I'm sure that he's got some lawyers that will help complicate the process. But it started from this little girl named Blue, who since coming into Libertas International, she's learned a third language. She studies French. She does these really nice like educational videos to help give kids a voice to what they're going through. She's become like this little activist in the fight against human trafficking and sexual abuse. And because she spoke up and she maintained her bravery throughout a process that at one point we didn't have a lot of faith that this guy was going to pay for what he's done, because she kept through it and continued to work on it, this guy is now facing justice. And we're sure in the coming years that many more victims of Peter Kennedy will find their voice, reach out for help, and share their story.
What kind of bravery does that take for a young person to go through that entire ordeal and still have the guts and the fortitude to stand up and do what we would say is the right thing? It's easy to sit back in a position like I'm in and say that's the right thing to do, but I've never been in her shoes. I just can't imagine the bravery, the stick-to-itiveness, the perseverance. I just can't think of enough adjectives to describe how much respect I have for that young lady to be able to stand up and do that. And I remember, I don't remember, I've got your notes here in front of me from the emails you sent me, that he was finally taken into custody in Argentina after trying to force a young Argentinian woman to become his wife. So even though he knows the world law enforcement community is looking for him, he's not giving up on his sick, demonic ways. Oh, good Lord, that just brings a whole new definition to perversion.
Yeah, he's evil. He's evil, and the girls that were coming that were victimized by him, they're still processing the trauma just based on how evil he was. And you know what's weird is 2 days before he was arrested, he tried to follow me on LinkedIn. That's weird. So that's another thing of like the stuff that's been going on like over the last couple of months. But he's in jail.
It's making me want to log into LinkedIn right now and make sure he's not. I got a lot of followers on LinkedIn.
Well, this guy, he's still in custody in Argentina. He's working on being extradited to Colombia because I think they're going to be the first ones. I think the Americans, like, thank goodness, like they're also involved as well because he has an American citizenship. He has like 7 or 8 citizenships across the world, but he has an American one as well. And I just want to give a shout out to this girl too. Like this girl Blue you can find her on Instagram. Like I'll send you the handle so if people want to follow her. But we're actually in the process because she's very creative. She's a very creative individual. She has a massive following on Instagram, something like 900,000 followers or something. Yeah, just a massive following. And she's doing this service project over the next this next year to where she's helping upcoming nonprofits to increase their social media following. She did with us. Like she worked with us for a while and helped us get from like 10,000 to like 52,000 or something. I think that's what we're currently at. And she wants to do that for different nonprofits that are up and coming, like the one that I told you about earlier with the guys in Thailand. Right. But we're currently raising money for her specifically. So I'll give a shameless plug of like our fund and need currently, to where this girl, she needs a really advanced laptop to be able to do these kind of creative videos with AI and with these animation stuff with the memory. And the cost of this laptop is around $10,000 in Colombia. So I think we have it on our website. If you click on donate, there's an option that says Blue's laptop.
I'm looking at it right now. It's the top one.
Is still there?
Yep.
Perfect. And that's what we're raising money for currently, where if your listeners if you've stuck with us this far after hearing about Nazis and pedophiles and bestiality, if you've stuck with us this far, we're raising $10,000 for Blue specifically. And all those donations are tax deductible, and all those will go to Blue so that she can buy the laptop, which allows her to be creative, allows her to generate healing, but also generate impact for our partners in the nonprofit space. They're also looking to get their social media presence off the ground. What she does, she makes a video, they do a collaboration with the nonprofit that's upcoming, and a lot of her followers go follow that nonprofit as well. And so to be able to do that in a way that we're honoring her and what she wants to do in her healing, we're raising $10,000 specifically for Blue's laptop. And I couldn't advocate for a better survivor. She's very loyal to Libertas. She's very open with her story. and she helped bring down a Nazi. I mean, you can't, if you're going to give at the end of the year, no better place to give than Blue's laptop,
Yeah.
in my humble opinion.
That's a home run hitter right there. That's like a trifecta, I guess they call it. And you mentioned she's also studying graphic design. So here's a lady, just like Sherry Foster that I mentioned earlier, who hasn't let her horrible circumstances that would just tear most people apart, including me. She hasn't let that dictate her future. She's moving forward with her life. She's doing things to help others prevent from them getting in the same situation that she was in. Wow. Tell her she's up here. Does she go by Blue or Azul?
She goes by Blue. It's her favorite color. She's awesome. Like because she had her name that was her name before, but it represented what her mom named her, and had her mom's last name, her dad's last name, and she just didn't want that at all. And so the process of changing her name legally was a very long process, but very important for her healing. When she first did it, she wanted to change her name to Ukraine. And we were like, why do you want to do that? And she's like, well, it represents the little guy fighting against the big guy, the bully, the big man. And we're like, it's such a beautiful thought, but
Yeah.
we don't know if that's going to be true 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Like, countries change, politicians change. Like right now in the year 2023, 24, yes, Ukraine represents the little guy standing up to the bully,
Right.
But it might not always be that way. If you want to do that, we'll support you, but we're just going to give you our thoughts. And she was like, no, that's a good point. And so she went on Blue because Blue is her favorite color of the ocean, color of the sky, represents peace, cleanliness. And she went with the English version of Blue, which is Blue.
I love it. What a feisty young lady.
Yeah.
You got to respect somebody like that. Well, I know it's hard to believe, but we've gone through another hour. It's I'm probably I'll have a couple nightmares about these, or at least wake up with these on my mind for the next few days, because the depravity of man is just unfathomable. I think it's limitless. We look at the cartels and how brutal they are, but then you look at these people who are taking advantage of our children. It's just sickening. It's sickening. So I mentioned it in the first show. I think I've mentioned it here, but I'm going to mention it again. Libertas International. It's LIBERTAS international.org. When you get on their front page there, their homepage, I'm looking at it right now. Let me get back to the homepage because I'm looking at the donation page. In the top right corner, you'll see a blue button that says donate. All you got to do is click on that button. It pops up that quick. It just popped up on my screen, and you'll see how you can give. You can become a one-time donor, a monthly donor, an annual donor. I would strongly ask that you become a regular donor of this organization. You heard Tyler say they're not the wealthiest nonprofit out there trying to help some of the worst victims of violence and abuse of all levels. I can't think of a whole lot more. There's great charities out there. I mean, my wife and I, we give to several different charities. We've had to actually limit it because once somebody gets your name, I guess they sell it to all the other charities.
We don't do that. But I wouldn't be encouraged to.
The only mail I get now is bills and please give me money for this organization or that organization. And I'm big on donating to food programs, especially here in the Orlando area, because I was fortunate enough to never go hungry, and I don't want anybody else to go hungry. But this one, where he's helping Tyler here and your entire organization are doing everything you can. They've dedicated their lives to helping other people. There is no higher calling. You've heard me talk about law enforcement, military, first responders, anybody that goes into government. You're a public servant. And when you're serving your fellow man, in my book, there is no higher calling. And that's what Tyler and his group are doing. I mean, you've heard a little bit about the dangers of that they're now facing, which in my book tells me that they're being successful because they've touched a raw nerve with some of the criminal organizations down in Colombia. The sad thing is it's not allowing him the freedom to get the job done as he had before. He's not sitting back taking a vacation, I'll tell you that. He's not even at home. He's here in the United States, but he's not home. He's been at a fundraiser today, or are you going to do it tonight? I'm not sure which.
Yeah, tonight, yeah.
I don't know whose office you're sitting in there, but thank him for letting you. It looks like a police office. I see a plaque there behind your head. Looks like it's got a badge on it. But please thank them for allowing us to take your time in his office or their office. But ladies and gentlemen, please give serious consideration to this. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, Tyler, coming back on again after 6 months and giving me all this time of staying in touch as a friend and a colleague and a brother, Christian brother on top of that. I will support you. I will shout your praises as long as I've got breath, especially as long as I've got Game of Crimes, and I have no intention of going anywhere with it. So might be a while, we hope.
Good.
And for the listeners out there, you guys, thank you so much. You continually come back. I don't know why. I know I sound like a country boy. I don't know why you come back to listen to this voice. You see, I don't have a whole lot left up here, but I will. That's what I do promise you is I will continue to bring some of the bravest, the toughest, the baddest, the most humble heroes and heroines that you'll ever hear about. You get to meet them on here. You get to see them on here. You get to hear their story. It's not Murph telling you what they did. They're telling you themselves what they did. I just happen to have a little research little things that I like to know about that I think you might be interested in. So God bless you all. Thank you so much, Tyler. We'll continue to pray for you, brother, and the organization, all the people that are affiliated with Libertas International. I've got Blue's name down here on my list. I've got your new podcast. It'll be coming out in January. It should be out now. Locked Off Logic Podcast. Go over and just check it out. I don't know what it's about yet. I mean, he told us what it's about, but I don't know. Is it good? I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. But go over and are you going to be on YouTube?
Yeah, we got YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Yeah, those are probably the main three.
That's the biggies.
Yeah.
So go over and check them out. Give them a listen. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to them. Give them a like. Hit that like button.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what they have an opportunity to help fund what he's doing with Libertas International, and he's not even telling you about that. But that comes from your support, not financial support. It's as simple as hitting that subscribe button and hit the like. Download the episode. That's what you do on YouTube. Okay. I'll quit bitching at you. Thank you all so much for joining me once again to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all that you heard about today, the Game of Crimes. I'll see y'all next week. Well, unfortunately, that's it for this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Thank you folks so much for taking the time to see and hear some of the best true crime content you can find anywhere. None of this would be possible without your support. If you didn't know this already, Game of Crimes is now on YouTube. Just type in Game of Crimes Podcast in the YouTube search bar. You can send me your comments on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or to our email address, which is gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com. Our website, it's gameofcrimespodcast.com. That's where you'll find all our episodes, books written by our guests, merchandise, and more. If you're looking for even more content, now go over to patreon.com/gameofcrimes and sign up. There you'll find several bonus episodes each month, ranging from serious and current topics to some silly and fun events. And you can even get early access to each week's interviews before they drop on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can even subscribe for free and hear the first 5 minutes of each episode, and that's to help you decide if you'd like to spend some of your hard-earned cash to hear more. That's patreon.com/gameofcrimes. To all our guests here on Game of Crimes, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. I mean that sincerely. Thank you for your service to your communities, your countries, and for taking the time to tell us about your adventurous lives. May God bless and protect all the men and women in law enforcement, our military, and all of our first responders. And you know what? This goes for all of our listeners as well. Thank you for your continued support. And just one last thought here. It's okay for us to have different ideas and different opinions, but it doesn't mean we can't continue to be friends. All right, my final thank you. Thanks for joining me again to play the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes. I'll see y'all next week.